Electric requests a discretionary permit amendment to reduce building size, serve one tenant, and add outdoor storage at 358 Shunpike Road in the IZDW, Industrial Zoning District West. DP 26-07, Christopher Mellink requests a discretionary permit to establish a tasting room as an accessory use to an on-site distillery located at 400 Avenue D, Suite 60 in the IZDW. Appeal, APP 26-01, Karen Pellin appeals the zoning administrator's issuance of a zoning violation warning, just a warning, letter issued 9/29 and a follow-up letter issued 10/15 at 345 Mountain View Road in the RZD. Lastly, the DRB will be reviewing final plans for DP 24-06, the Glaser River's Edge development at the corner of Mountain View Road and Old Stage Road. The Development Review Board, DRB, follows rules of procedure and conducts quasi-judicial proceedings, aka public hearings like court, pursuant to Williston Unified Development Bylaw, WDB, Chapter 6 and Appendix A. The powers of the DRB are established in and limited by this bylaw, as well as state statute, and expounded upon in the staff reports or comment for the board not related to an item on the agenda. Okay, and I'm just going to go back to momentarily to our roll call. Brian Curtis, present. All right, all five present. Still have a quorum. No problem. Is there any public comment on items not related to the agenda tonight? Okay, hearing none, we will move right into the public hearing. First hearing is DP 23-15.1. Lakeside Electric requested DP amendment to reduce building size, serve a single tenant, and add outdoor storage. 358 Shunpike Road. Could the applicant or applicants please come up to the table? Welcome. Could you please state your names and addresses for the record?
My name is Jacques LaRose. I work for Civil Engineering Associates at 10 Mansfield View Lane in South Burlington.
Thank you.
Mark LeClaire, Lakeside Electric owner.
Okay, thank you, Jacques and Mark. Staff goes next.
Thank you. This is a request for a discretionary permit to amend the site layout to provide a smaller single-tenant building with outdoor storage at 358 Shunpike Road. The site is currently vacant and was previously a single-family dwelling. It's a 0.6 acre lot located in the Industrial Zoning District West. It has its access from a town road. It was not subject to design review or Conservation Commission review. Staff recommendation is to take testimony and close the hearing, deliberate, and approve the application. The DRB and applicant should discuss finding of fact number 1. Project history. This project went through pre-application review in 2023 and discretionary permit approval in May. Interdepartmental review, the Public Works. Project elements, Industrial Zoning District West. Project elements, Industrial Zoning District West. This is where finding of fact number 1 comes into play. The applicant should clarify the use at the DRB hearing. The narrative describes a warehouse, but the floor plan with office space and vehicle bays implies the electrical contractor use. Both uses are allowed. It just needs to be clarified in this approval. The dimensional standards comply with the setbacks, and the building height will be confirmed at administrative permit. Outdoor storage complies. A 1,300 square foot storage area is shown to the rear of the building, and it will be screened on the eastern side by the proposed fence. Access complies with a single curb cut onto Shunpike Road. There's a multi-use path on the opposite side of Shunpike Road, and the DRB did not require a sidewalk or path easement on this side of the road in the prior discretionary permit. That path or sidewalk is not shown as a desired amenity on the official map. Off-street parking complies as proposed with the number of vehicle parking spaces, the location of the ADA space, and they have shown bicycle parking and the end-of-trip facility within the building. On-site infrastructure, compliance is anticipated. This is where the Public Works comment comes into play.
You want to add or supplement to the staff report, let us know.
Yep, just to clarify, yes, the building will be used as the electrical contracting use that Emily has identified. It'll be home for Mark's business, Lakeside Electric. So that, and we don't have anything to add.
Okay.
Staff comments, so.
Thank you. DRB, any questions? No? Okay. Last chance, anybody? Members of the public? Okay,
No chats and no raised hands on Zoom.
in that case, this hearing is closed at 7:09 PM. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Next up, we have DP 26-07. Christopher Melink requests a discretionary permit to establish a tasting room as an accessory use to an on-site distillery located at 400 Avenue D, Suite 60 in the IZDW. Christopher or someone representing the applicant? Christopher, I presume?
Yep.
Great, thank you. If you could, please just state your full name and address for the record, and then we'll go to the staff report.
Christopher Melnick, 14 Quail Run, South Burlington.
Thank you. Staff goes next.
Thank you. This is a request for a discretionary permit to establish an accessory tasting area. The change of use and the establishment of the distillery itself can be permitted administratively. It is the tasting area that solely requires the discretionary permit. The overall parcel size is 2.43 acres located in the industrial zoning district, where it is served by town roads and not subject to design review or conservation commission review. Staff recommends that the DRB take testimony, close the hearing, and deliberate and approve the decision tonight with findings, conclusions, and conditions as drafted. This is the first time the DRB is reviewing the request. The applicant filed the administrative permit on October 24th, where it was determined that the tasting area would need the discretionary permit. Interdepartmental review, the Public Works Department provided a comment memo and emails. Those are included as a condition of approval. The fire department did not respond to the request for comment. No public comment letters were received at the time of mail out nor up until this evening. In terms of the standards with the industrial zoning district, this complies. There's no outdoor modifications to the building shown. And the use does not propose outdoor storage. Vehicle parking complies as proposed, where the parking spaces are accessible to the front entrance for customers, and there will be a bicycle rack provided. I do have a note in final plans that includes the specification to be the inverted U-style rack that is required by the bylaw. On-site infrastructure, so this property is served by municipal water and on-site wastewater. And prior to that administrative permit approval, DPW sign-off is required, and we need to see documentation that the state water and wastewater specifications are met for the wastewater system. Their plan is to haul off-site the high-strength waste. It's a very small distilling operation. So that is required prior to the administrative permit. Maintenance complies as proposed. The plan shows an outdoor storage area that will be cleaned up and used for snow storage. And it does show dumpster storage locations as well. The meat and potatoes is accessory use. So our bylaw allows manufacturers, like distilleries, to have tasting areas. This is well below the maximum size limits that are allowed. It's 144 square feet within a 500 square foot distillery space. There could be an outdoor seating area, but that's not being proposed at this time. And that is it for the bylaw requirements. What follows are findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Christopher, are you going to have seats in the tasting area?
Not any
Okay.
seats. Yeah, the state allows me to have standing tasting area.
Got it.
Which helps with parking.
Understand. Do you have any questions for the DRB or anything to supplement Emily's report?
I don't think so. Everything's very good.
Do you have any questions about, and this would be outside the DRB, but since you're here and Christine from DPW is here, do you have any questions about the memorandum on wastewater management?
Nope, I have an engineer working on it right now.
Perfect. All right. DRB? Anybody?
No.
Okay. Members of the public? Any questions? If that's the case, we are going to close this hearing at 7:14 PM. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.
Hey, Christopher, could you close that door when you head out? Thank you.
Next up is Appeal APP 26-01. Karen Pellin appeals the zoning administrator's issuance of a zoning violation warning letter issued September 29th and a follow-up letter issued October 15th at 345 Mountain View Road in the RZD. Karen and other applicants, please come on up. Thank you both. If you could just, as others have done, state your full names and address for the record, and then we'll turn it over to staff.
Karen Pellin, 345 Mountain View Road, Williston, Vermont.
Tucker Cardy, owner, Cardy Excavation, Stonewood.
Okay, thank you, Tucker and Karen. We'll turn it over to staff for the report, please.
Good evening, folks. My name is David Maroney. I'm the Senior Conservation Planner for the town of Williston. I'll be reading our staff report for the appeal of this zoning violation warning. Noting that I wrote this staff report as a perspective of the Senior Conservation Planner, reviewing both the zoning violation warning letter reviewed by my colleague and the appeal letter submitted by the applicant. This is an appeal of just a zoning violation warning letter. So there's relatively limited opportunity at this stage for DRB input, really mainly limited to scrutinizing the zoning administrator required actions from the warning letter. And the DRB, following the hearing, has the opportunity to uphold, modify, or overturn those recommendations. The subject property is 345 Mountain View Road. Staff recommended action is to take testimony, close, deliberate, and modify the decision with minor clarifications and adjustments. We'll note that there is no recommendation to create a timeline for corrective action as it states in the written version of this report that the DRB received. There's no public comment letters received at this time. All right. This zoning violation warning letter was and follow-up letter were issued after receiving two notices or two zoning violation complaint forms submitted in April and September of 2025. The two elements to that zoning violation warning. One was activity that was encroaching on 50-foot wetland buffer and storage of commercial vehicles related to an unpermitted home business. I've put a number of elements of site history and appeal into this timeline, but I'm just going to point out a couple that pertain to providing the most efficient understanding of the case. On August 11, 2014, there was a new dwelling permit approved and issued by the town. At that time, there was a building envelope established that matched permitted impact area from state wetlands permit, and that created a building envelope that itself encroached into a 50-foot wetland buffer. On May 18th, 2021, there was also a permit issued by the town for a swimming pool. And then the two zoning violation complaint forms. The first was submitted in April of 2025 for vehicles parked on or in violation of wetlands and extended driveway into wetlands. And the second, September 19th, submitted anonymously alleging the creation of a road and fill into conserved wetlands for additional parking for commercial vehicles. So we'll just take a look at the two components of this violation warning in succession. First, the wetland buffer issues, and then some components related to the home business. So I mentioned the context related to the home site that was permitted in 2014, mainly because that building envelope is not up for sort of re-examination or relitigation at this time. So one clarification that is recommended from the DRB to establish on top of the recommendations that were issued in the zoning violation warning letter is to clarify that only the disturbance in the wetland that is beyond that established envelope should be considered in violation of the watershed protection bylaws for Williston at this time, with the understanding that that building envelope created a vested right for the homeowner to have certain kinds of amenities within that envelope. Separately, the applicant is working with the state wetlands program to resolve a concurrent violation notice related to these disturbances. All right, in the zoning violation warning letter, I'll summarize the elements. So the vehicle parking area that was created with gravel fill was noted. You can see where that was created, the impact wetland area on this small map. And second, it was noted that a portion of pool patio was established within wetland buffer. However, that was inside of that 2014 building envelope. But the dimensions of that pool patio extended beyond the originally permitted 4-foot perimeter deck into the Class 2 wetland buffer. There were 4 recommendations associated from the zoning administrator contained within the 2 letters. The first is that turf lawns, cleared areas, and parking areas that are within that wetland buffer must be restored to a combination of wetland, riparian, forest, or meadow vegetation appropriate to the site. The second was to provide a scaled site plan depicting the area of disturbance and restoration plant locations of one of these species related to recommendation number 1. There was a recommendation to include any disturbed or maintained areas outside the pool patio area but within the wetland buffer in that restoration plan. And the fourth was a recommendation or clarification that dead and wind-thrown trees should be left in a wetland buffer unless they're identified as hazard trees as defined by the Williston bylaw. There's a small graphic here which depicts an area of wetland that was recently mapped by a wetland scientist working with the appellant, and that shows an area of gravel or fill that was created for the parking area that is within this Class 2 wetland buffer, delineated in yellow here. You can also see that that does overlap with the placement of the pool. However, I'm going to show, scrolling through the graphics here. Here we are. Here's a version of this graphic submitted by the appellant which overlays the original 2014 building envelope. And you can see that the pool is fully contained within that envelope. So another one of these modifications that I've recommended tonight is simply that the town will defer to the process that is already happening with the state with regards to any wetland impacts from that pool and simply move to resolve the dimension issue related to the pool patio by having the appellant, who is already working with planning and zoning on some retroactive permitting to resolve that particular issue. All right, so in the appeal letter that was submitted by the appellant, there were 3 requests made with relation to these wetlands. 2 of these are not applicable. There's no opportunity for the DRB to weigh in on, but one of them there is potential area for the DRB to make a clarification. And that is the first. The request is to allow the parking area to remain in its current conditions subject to additional stabilization or vegetation restoration measures. My recommendation after reviewing the bylaws is to deny this request. It is my opinion that there is no reasonable reading of WDB 29.9.6. It's a section of the bylaw that relates certain exceptions and uses that can occur within a wetland buffer. And it's my opinion that there's no reasonable reading of that bylaw that permits an exception for parking in a wetland buffer. So after deliberation, that will be a DRB action to decide whether to deny or grant that exception for maintaining the parking area in the wetland buffer, if you concur or disagree with my opinion. The second request was to assign responsibility for restoration to the Vermont DEC Wetlands Program related to some narrative that was described by the applicant in the appeal letter. My recommendation is simply noting that that's not applicable. The DRB has no jurisdiction to compel the state agencies to action at this time. So what's happening with the Vermont DEC Wetlands Program will have to happen independently and concurrently with the local action related to Williston's bylaws. And the third request was to defer enforcement pending further consultation between the town and the state. And my clarification here is simply that it's not necessary to make any comment on deferring enforcement because this is only at the stage of a zoning violation warning letter, which itself does not create conditions for enforcement. And noting that the applicant is already working with staff to address these nonconformities through permitting and restoration, this promises to avoid any escalation to a formal notice of zoning violation, which would create conditions for enforcement. So there's no need at this time to weigh in with a timeline on this particular issue. Now, just to clarify, my two recommendations here are that the DRB modify the zoning administrator's recommendations in the ways I've described. That is to add a clarification that these recommendations only apply outside of the 2014 building envelope, and simply that the excess or the issues related to the pool can be resolved through retroactive permitting, and we do not need to take further action with regards to weighing in on restoration actions for the pool. The second components of the zoning violation warning letter revolved around the commercial vehicles that were stored on site related to the unpermitted home business. The applicant is already working with staff, submitted a draft application for a home business, and I've simply noted here a couple of things. There are elements of that initial draft plan, which storage of certain size vehicles, and so that will need to be resolved with staff working with the applicant to come up with a solution and clarify what is permissible and what is not with regards to permitting the home business. There is a small opportunity here within the bylaws that the DRB may weigh in on requirements for the home business with regards to off-street parking. I'll show this diagram right here. This was submitted along with the proposal for the home business, for permitting the home business. And this is the 2014 building envelope. And with this application is the proposal to have a sanctioned driveway extension here, which will allow parking of certain vehicles related to the home business. Now, within the bylaw, there is an opportunity for the zoning administrator or the DRB to require a certain degree of off-street parking, or to require buffer requirements that are more stringent than would be normally required in the RZD. My recommendation is that it is not necessary for the DRB to weigh in any further on this issue at this time, but that option is there. What follows are findings of facts, conclusions of law as to be determined by the DRB ruling in relation to interpreting WB 29.9.6 during deliberation, and recommended language and recommendations depending on the DRB decision.
Thank you, David. Karen and Tucker, thank you for coming in. You guys are here early on this one. I think this is the first appeal of a warning letter that I've seen, so good on you guys.
Other option
You're
was.
clearly on top of this.
Yeah.
And I did see in the some of your communications with staff how this happened with communicating with the state, and I get it. The next thing I'm going to say before I turn it over to questions you might not like as much is that I have not seen this DRB really bend much on interpretations of bylaws for obvious reasons. If we do, we're going to be opening Pandora's box on other things. I'd like to give both of you guys a chance to supplement anything, to ask us any questions or staff. And if you don't have anything that you want to throw at us, we'll just turn it over to the rest of the DRB to ask you guys questions.
No, I think just in summary, I mean, Cardi Excavation Stone Oak was started a year ago, last July. Tucker's the only employee. It's pretty small scale, residential,
Okay.
homeowner type work. So it's nothing massive. The goal is to become scalable, to be able to sustain a secondary commercial address. But I didn't realize going into this when we stood the business up that there was going to be such limitation. Just the nature of the business, there isn't traffic, there isn't really anything other than the vehicles, which we've outlined in the permit request. So, open to options. I think trying to absorb a secondary commercial address right now is just not where we need to be. We've already started exploring options for, temporary parking for some of this, if this is not a feasible option, but hoping that maybe there's an extension or, some sort of ability to, delay until we can get to a point where we have that address. So that's really it. I think down.
And as she stated, it's not a business where employees are coming in and out all day long. In all reality, it's me leaving in the morning. I work 10, 12-hour days. It's me coming back at home by myself. The machinery is 95% of the time out on a job site. There's not a lot of in and outs. And the only neighbor that would be disturbed would be the neighbor out front of us. She's written a letter already, if you guys would like to see that, on any approvals. There's been no disturbance of her there. That's really all I have to say, is we're working towards getting a commercial lot. We've already looked at prices. You guys all know the price of land is like ridiculous. We're gonna get there. I don't want to keep operating the business out of our yard, trust me. I do plan to be out of there fully, office and everything, within the next couple of years.
Perfect.
That's a
all.
goal.
Great to hear. David, I think you talked about a timeline a little bit, or a lack of a timeline. Can you go over that again for us, for the applicant?
Yeah, so as this is a zoning violation warning stage, the goal of a warning is really to bring the parties to the table with planning and zoning staff to troubleshoot and understand what needs to be done to bring a situation into compliance, and that's already happening. So the timelines that are currently being set through that interaction, as details are being reviewed in what I think is an appropriate fashion. For example, with regards to the wetland permitting, while we may be able to say, okay, this is what the town requires, we're going to give you, 2 months to go do it. We understand that there's also a concurrent review going on with the state. The state works on a very different timeline, and given that the restoration actions that would be required by the state and the town are likely to overlap significantly, I think any attempt to create a concrete timeline at this time would be somewhat arbitrary and not necessarily helpful for either party in creating a structure that would be useful in making things happen faster. With regards to the home business, I think similarly, the process is playing out as it is meant to be at this time, and the zoning administrator is already empowered to escalate a situation at this stage to a formal notice of violation if at any point it becomes clear that, for example, a hypothetical appellant or resident that was not in conformance with bylaws was not making every effort to resolve a nonconformity related to warning letters. So for those reasons, I don't think it's necessarily necessary for the DRB to make a prescriptive timeline at this time.
Great. Is that helpful?
Absolutely.
Cool. DRB, any questions? Okay.
No.
All right. Well, you said you're going to be out there and big in 2 years, and I believe it. I can tell you are.
Yeah.
All right.
Mark my words right now.
Cool.
Hard worker.
We will.
All right. Well,
So on that timeline
yep.
note, I just want to add that for the administrative permit the spring, we would be looking to you guys for those restoration plans and getting the work done to get out of the wetland buffer. And if those things aren't happening, or if there's evidence that the home business is operating above and beyond what the permit is, then it would be escalated to that formal notice of zoning violation process.
Thank you for clarifying that, Emily. And obviously, you guys know how to get a hold of Emily and David at this point. So this was the sort of our last public hearing item of the night. You guys are welcome to stay through a deliberative session and wait. I don't think there's going to be anything surprising that happens tonight, so feel free to do what you want, but we're going to be closing this hearing now if it doesn't seem like there are any other questions from the public or anyone else. Okay.
Yeah, when the DRB finalizes the decision tonight, we'll send them to you by email, and you'll get a formal notice in a couple weeks.
Okay, great, okay.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it, everybody.
So we will close this hearing at 7:35 p.m. Thank you. So our next order of business is other business, which is DP 24-06, the Glaser River's Edge development at the corner of Mountain View and Old Stage Road. The DRB retained final plans review from back in April of this year, April 8th. Will we have, Emily, should we have them come up, or is this a?
Yeah, so this is a public hearing. We have Brian Curry in the room, so I think he's welcome to come up to the table if there's any questions about the final plans that have been submitted. I can get us going. So the DRB retained final plan review. Typically, this is all deferred to staff as an administrative action. And planning staff recommends that the DRB approve the civil set and authorize staff to continue discussions with town legal counsel as it pertains to the development agreement, including the sequencing of land transfer to the town and the planned community declaration. So with this cover memo that I gave you guys in your packets, there's a narrative memo from O'Leary Burke that goes line by line through all of the DRB conditions of approval, which are pages 15 through 20 of that memo, as well as all of the public works comments and independent review comments. To focus the discussion in your packets, I gave you a reduced plan set with only the sheets that pertain to those particular DRB conditions around the landscaping plan, the landscaping along the path that connects the two neighborhoods in regards to the Conservation Commission comments and the Habitat Assessment Report, and the plans for the fire department comment around turning radii and parking, and the construction plans for materials phasing. I do note that there is a DRB condition that conflicts with the standards of the bylaw in terms of document procedure. So after the approval of final plans, which is the civil set, the development agreement and the guarantees for public and private improvements, those documents need to be in place before administrative permit. The reason that some of the legal items are still outstanding is we have been working with Public Works and the applicant on some of the fine-tuned language. And more particularly is the approval of this discretionary permit hinges on the substantial benefit of the land conveyance to the town. And the land needs to convey to the town in a manner that's free and clear of encumbrances. Right now, the only one that's pending is the final Act 250 permit notice. So our town attorney is prepared to do all of our final legal document review in one bundle. When those Act 250 conditions are noticed, then those package of documents can be finalized and executed before the administrative permits to begin construction.
Okay, thank you, Emily. I think one of the main reasons this final approval was retained by the DRB was that there was some back and forth between DPW and the applicant at the time. Christine, I don't know if would you mind coming forward and speaking to that?
Thank you. I think most of you know me already, but Christine Doherty, Department of Public Works, Assistant Director. So DRB's position is on this and many other development plans similar to this one, is, we need to have our legal orders, our legal documents in order prior to us being comfortable signing off on the final plans that are being submitted. The reason for that is because we can get into some challenges with getting those legal developments or those legal agreements when it comes to easements, ownership, responsibilities, things like that. And so until those are really resolved and we have something in hand that is agreeable to both parties, DPW is not comfortable signing off on any final plan submittals.
Thank you, Christine. I think I may need you to expound on that a little more. And
Yep.
I am going to admit that I'm a little lost on DPW's position at the moment.
Okay, so being able to make sure that we have the right-of-ways, the easements. So for example, we have on this development particularly, some of these are going to remain private roads. Some of the water lines are going to remain private. One of the pump stations for the sewer is going to remain private. Making sure that there are the right legal documents and agreements between all parties. That we see that our attorneys have seen that, have approved that before signing off on the final plans. When the final plans get signed off on, they're signed off on. Changes to them.
I'm with you. I think a lot of the questions that DPW had back in April are sort of separate from what you're speaking about now. Is that correct?
We just got copies of the proposed irrevocable offers for the private roads, public roads, right-of-ways over the paths. All of those just came in yesterday. Our legal has not had a chance to review any of them.
Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, so what I have in the motion is that the DRB would authorize the approval of the civil plans, and then we would continue to engage on the legal documents, as typically final plans are not approved by the DRB, they're approved administratively by staff. So we would be working with Public Works on getting all of those documents, and when they're all good to go, we would have Pete come in and sign the plats and issue everything.
Emily?
Excuse me, you're not the chair anymore. We would have you, Nate, sign
Okay.
the
So,
final plans.
am I understanding correctly that, and I think I'm asking both of you, the DRB needs to approve these final plans as they are today, the civil plans, so that they can go to the lawyers and get the things done that DPW needs to eventually sign off on the final plan. So I guess my question is, Christine, is the Department of Public Works comfortable with the DRB moving forward as planned today, as proposed?
No.
Okay.
So the acceptance of the way it's been explained to me from my supervisor is that acceptance of the discretionary permit and the plans as they are, and bringing us final plans as presented, we can come up with the language. We're not talking about changing significant paths and relocating things like that. But when they come in with final plans, they should be coming in with final plans and appropriate legal documents that are supportive and consistent with what's being presented, so that we can compare them together.
Okay.
At that time, DPW would say, okay, we're comfortable with everything, sign this off, and they can come back and you guys can sign it and everybody's happy. There shouldn't be significant changes going into the final plans. following the discretionary permit to the final plans.
Okay. Brian, would you like to comment on any of what you've heard? What can you do here?
Yeah, so we've submitted the final plans in early October, and we've had a few back and forths with Christine, and we feel the plans are at a place where Public Works has no objections to the plan set. They're just waiting for the legal review to take place in order to give validity to our right-of-ways, our easements, you know, what's public versus private, to make sure we have declarations. Well, Emily's saying that the town attorney won't start that review until our Act 250 permit issues, which my expectation is going to issue next week. But, you know, we've been waiting for 2 months now. I don't see why the plan set is where it is, and I don't think there's any objection that there's any issues with the plans. Why can't the town attorney review coincide with, you know, prior to administrative permit issuance? Like, we're not gonna be able to start until the town attorney's good with it. What Works is good with it, right? Zoning's good with it, our department, you know, so I don't see why it's worth having us come back here to you folks again. We basically, you know, the legal docs have been reviewed and approved by the town attorney.
If the Act 250 comes through, as you said, in a week or 2 weeks, how quickly could you get all the rest of the legal work done that needs to be done?
Well, for us, it's a hurry up and wait. The town attorney, I imagine, will take a few weeks at least to chew through everything. He did get a draft in early October. I didn't realize we were waiting on the Act 250 permit in order for that review to start. Obviously, there's a lot of it that doesn't coincide with the Act 250 permit.
Brian, let me interrupt you for 1 second. Emily, it seems like all we're talking about here is reordering the steps that we would normally have taken as a board previously on other, you know, with other applicants. And you said, I think you said yourself, under normal circumstances, the board doesn't require the applicant to come back to the board. It usually just goes directly to staff, and staff hammers out the details.
Correct. Usually the staff hammers out the details. And the DRB's main focus in past precedent with final plan review is making sure that the civil set, the landscaping plans, the architecturals, if applicable, comply with the conditions of approval. And then when we have that DRB authorization, it's administrative between planning and zoning, public works, town council, and the applicant, where we're not beholden to that 2-week DRB meeting schedule to
Right, and in this case, are you comfortable that those areas have been taken care of, that the DRB would normally pay attention to?
For the civil plans, yes. All of the other legal agreements are still in conversation.
And the DRB wouldn't weigh in on that anyways, that would be deferred to staff?
Yes.
My vote is to approve the
And
plans
so,
and let them move forward.
So DRB, it sounds like, retained final approval of the plans. And that's, so I'm in agreement with you, Scott.
Yeah.
That if the plans
I mean, the most
are consistent with the terms and the conditions of approval, then I don't see why we can't approve it.
I agree.
I'm a little confused as to why we're having such an in-depth conversation about something that is pretty standard
Because
workings.
I think the concern from DPW's perspective is that when plans get approved without everything being in place, it's assumed that they have a right to proceed with those plans as they're presented and as they've been approved.
It's the way we've always done it in the past.
Yeah.
And okay, I'm
So I think-
explaining our position.
What we could do procedurally is the DRB makes this motion, And typically, the chair comes in, the next day to sign through the plans and the Mylars. We'll hold off on that until Public Works is able to say yes to all of the legal agreements so that the chair's timing of the signature is aligned with all of the legal documents, having DPW sign off.
I mean, Christine, nothing happens until the legal agreements are done anyways in any project.
I would say, Scott, that my experience in the last couple projects is that things have been going forward without having everything in place, and there's been some challenges around that. It really takes a lot of the negotiating powers away from the from DPW, making sure that we get what we need. It really complicates things a lot from our end, from the field perspective. The applicants often, when they get that signed plan, to them, it's a move forward process.
So Emily, what's your response to that? I mean, have you seen some complicated, some projects move forward that have not had, for lack of a better term, all of their ducks in a row, all of the legal done?
Yes, and I think most of that comes down to the applicants not reading their notice of decisions thoroughly. We are going through that situation in a major way, literally today, with another project where you would think they would have their ducks in a row and would know the process. But at the end of the day, the most important permit is the administrative permit, when you can start digging in the dirt. And that requires Public Works sign off, and that requires all the legal documents in place.
But I would say that DPW is not asking for them to be signed. We're looking for drafts. We're looking for making sure that everything's in place when these final plans are coming in. Now, signatures and final execution of those can happen prior to administrative permit, but we want to see and know that we're in agreement with the parties and that we are comfortable with everything prior to saying, yes, this final plan makes sense, that we have the agreements, that they have the authority to give them to us, that all of those ducks are in a row. These are drafts. These are not asking for fully executed documents, but we're asking for them to be in place so that they can be executed without delay when they go to after final plans.
As DRB has, holds final plans, can final plans be issued with a condition of approval?
No. The DRB can defer final plans to staff, but they can't have additional conditions.
So why don't we just defer the final plans to staff
That would be fine
and
too.
void this?
That is the same purpose. I mean, if you defer them back to staff, in our view, the easements are all shown, the offers are all shown, everything's shown. I mean, what's being discussed is the verbiage and the mechanisms for donations, and sure, there's some complicated legals associated, but is the expectation the plat's gonna change? No, I think those requests would have been made by now.
I don't think they have to come back even if we do this again.
If we don't do this, they would have to come back.
Right.
So
We would have to have another agenda item, but I don't think you had to be here. I'm glad you are. I don't think you had to. Is my point.
Glad it came.
Why don't we just defer, why don't we just modify that to defer it to staff, for staff's approval?
Well, I think we should talk about this
Move into,
in deliberative session, because there's a couple things going on here that I'd like to talk with the board about.
Okay.
Brian, is there anything else that you'd like to add or ask the board at this point? Again, thank you for coming in. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, no worries. I guess I would say if approval and signing the plans, or if that can be deferred to signing them at Mylar recording, once all the departments have signed off, that's obviously acceptable. So is if you give authority back to staff, that accomplishes our goal tonight also.
Sure.
So either way, it's fine. It's just, when our applications aren't submitted, they don't have meetings just for final plan sign-offs. Christmas, Thanksgiving, who knows when we'll be back, so that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just
Hear
note
ya.
that December 9th is the last DRB meeting of the year, and with some of our quorum issues and going into cold and flu season, I think deferring to staff keeps this from trickling over into the new year, when a lot of work can take place in December and getting these documents buttoned up in terms of all the legal documents.
I guess my final question, Brian, is just if all these other things still need to be done, what really is the advantage to you of having this approved by the board today?
If you hold final approval, we have to wait until the DRB is meeting again. And as you said, with, you know, numbers dwindling.
Could be
quorums
January.
Available, if there's
You expect-
Christmas, if we're not, if the legals likely won't be reviewed and approved by December 6th, so, you know, where does that put us?
Nate, this one's unusual because the board required that it come back in front of the board. Under
Right.
normal circumstances, we don't do that.
Oh, I
It goes-
understand.
okay, it goes to
Yeah, no, I
Emily.
got
So
it.
if we don't approve it, then he's gotta come back.
And the reason we retained this right is because of the DPW questions, so I
Well,
just
and
wanted to
because it was
sure
a
that-
high profile, it was
Yeah.
a high profile development, and we wanted to make sure that it got done the way it was supposed to get done.
Got it.
That
Yep.
was it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brian. I think if there's nothing else, are there any other comments? There is no public on Zoom, so I think we're going to close the public session and move into deliberative session at 7:56 PM. Welcome back to the Williston Development Review Board meeting of November 25th. We are back in session at 8:22 PM. Is there a motion for DP 23-15.1 Lakeside Electric?
Yep.
Go ahead, Matt. Thank you.
That off. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Matthew Fraser, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all the accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 25th, 2025, accept the findings of fact and conclusion of law for DP 23-15.1, and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek the administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which the approval is based.
Thank you, Matt. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Scott. Is there any discussion? Yay or nay? Pete Kelly,
Yay.
Scott Riley,
Yay.
Brian Curtis,
Yay.
Matt Fraser.
Yay.
Chair is a yay. Motion carries. 5 in favor, none opposed. Is there a motion for DP 26-07 Christopher Mellink, 400 Avenue D, Suite 60?
Yes. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Brian Curtis, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 25th, 2025, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 26-07, and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based.
Thank you, Brian. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Pete seconds. Any discussion? Yay or nay? Pete Kelly,
Yay.
Scott Riley,
Yay.
Brian Curtis,
Yay.
Matt Fraser.
Yay.
Chair is a yay. 5 in favor, none opposed, motion carries. Is there a motion for APP 26-01, Karen Pellin, 345 Mountain View Road in the RZD.
Yes, as authorized by WDB 5.4.6, I, Pete Kelly, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the appeal of the administrator's decision, all of the accompanying materials, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of November 25th, 2025, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for APP 26-01 and modify the decision of the administrator as follows. 1, clarify that the zoning administrator recommendations related to wetland buffer encroachment only apply to disturbance that has occurred beyond the building envelope established in 2014. 2, resolve the excess pool dimensions through retroactive permitting. Defer to the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation Wetlands Program regarding wetland buffer restoration actions related to the 2021 pool installation and any subsequent expansion of impervious surface within the building envelope. I also propose a clarification to conclusions of law. Item 1 to read as follows. An exception to WDB 29.9.6 may not be granted for the purpose of maintaining a parking area in a 50-foot Class 2 wetland buffer.
Thanks, Pete.
A second.
Thank you, Brian. Any discussion? Okay, yay or nay? Pete Kelly,
Yay.
Scott Riley,
Yay.
Brian Curtis,
Yay.
Matt Fraser.
Yay.
Chair is a yay, 5 in favor, none opposed, motion carries. Would anyone on the board like to make a motion regarding DP 24-06 Glaser/River's Edge?
Yes, I'm happy to make a motion. Emily, can you put that on the screen? I, Scott Riley, move that the Williston Development Review Board defer final plan review and approval, including legal documents, to town staff for DP 24-06 Glaser River's Edge Development.
Thank you, Scott. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will take a vote. Yay or nay? Pete Kelly,
Yay.
Scott Riley,
Yay.
Brian Curtis,
Yay.
Matt Fraser.
Yay.
Chair is a yay, 5 in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
No minutes.
No, we did that.
Brian did.
We did the meeting minutes,
Online.
Probably.
yeah, by unanimous consent.
Yep.
So no minutes tonight.
Okay.
So all we need is a motion to adjourn. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Perfect.
Done. We are done at 8:29 PM. Thanks, everybody.